So Death Magnetic is currently the final Metallica album. Now the artwork is fantastic. It's a total throwback to the old days where it was simplistic, but it was very cool and featured on a single object. This time it's a coffin that has like magnetic energies from it. And I never understood the whole Death Magnetic title, but it sounds pretty cool. And the band logo is back to the original logo. Now, a lot of people absolutely hate this one when it came out, and a lot of people really loved it. And this album was them kind of giving into what the fans wanted. One of the other reasons a lot of people hate this album is that there's a lot of throwback type of stuff, to the point where some of it can be considered quoting themselves. Nowadays, I actually really like the album, and I feel that it does quote a little bit from the past. It goes for the same type of structures as if maybe they wrote this album right after Judas Kiss instead of the Black Album for a thrashy album. Not a lot of the riffs are like complete and utter regurgitation. Sure, there's some like harkening back, and some people even point out that some of the riffs are sped up versions of past riffs. But I think that they actually take the good structures that made their other songs in the past work, and then they threw in a lot of like really cool new ideas, especially in a lot of like the middle sections of these songs when they get fast. There's a lot of really, really great stuff that they've never done before, and it sounds great. With this album, they kind of return to that progressive thrash style, and this is a big problem for a lot of people too, because a lot of people who don't like Judas Kiss are going to hate this album for having so many long songs. It pretty much encompasses all the stuff that they've done. They even have a song that sounds like it was from the Load Reload era, but like the best song they could have conjured up in that era. With this album, it's like they try to get the best of all worlds. So I actually really used to not like this album like a lot of people do nowadays, and I think that this album has actually aged gracefully now. I used to not like it a lot because the production, which is a big important part of this album, a big reason why people bash it, just like in Justice for All, people say there's no bass, therefore it sucks. With this one, the production is a victim of what's known as the loudness war, where the mixing, instead of like mixing it, making it sound really clean and warm and everything, and instead they just crank the volume and the bassiness of it so that it just sounds bombastic and huge. But the problem is that in any setting, it's so loud, even with your speakers on like low volume, it's so bombastically loud that it basically breaks through its own sound barrier in a way where the speakers will rattle. And another reason I didn't like it was the performances. I used to absolutely hate, especially James's voice. I used to hate his whiny voice. But I've grown to realize that the vocals on this album are actually very much similar to the days of Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning. I mean, just compare like the first couple songs in the album to that, and he pretty much sings it the same type of way. And I can tell you it's definitely an improvement over the yeah-yeahs. Kirk actually does some pretty damn good solos throughout the album. There's quite a lot of wah. Rob Trujillo, the new member on this album, who joined right after Saint Anger came out and was with the band for so many years. It took them like 7 years to release this album. And when he finally came in, he does have a lot of cool bass performances out the album, but the loudness of it runs a lot of those. In fact, I saw some stuff where in the studio they're recording all these badass bass parts and hardly any of them can be heard. I mean, the band even said, Rob, this is your first outing with the band, make it a memorable one. Lars Ulrich sounds pretty decent. The production and sound of the guitars sound really weird, and it's not even just the overproduced loudness of it, it's the fact that they just sound so fuzzy and have no bite to them at all. So I used to not be the world's biggest fan of this album. I probably would have given it like a 6 out of 10 back in the day, because I used to think it was like rehashed the good old days and trying way too hard to be what they were. And to me it seemed like this album was more crappy new Metallica as opposed to returning to the old days, and there's some really, 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 really true full return to form riffs all over the place. The songs are what makes this album great. Even though everything's working against it, the performances aren't that great. They're old, they're trying to redo Days of Old, and the production sucks ass. But the music here, I've realized, is so strong that I think this album holds a candle up to Kill 'Em All, up to Ride the Lightning, honestly. So we start with That Was Just Your Life, which is a great opening to the album. This is one of those songs that's very, very long, one of like a 7-minute songs. And pretty much all the songs in this album are really long, and the intro is really dark and brooding, and has a lot of like guitar and bass layering and stuff to build atmosphere. Right when that production kicks in, the drums just blast your eardrums to pieces. And then it kicks into a pretty damn good thrashy riff. And a lot of riffs like this are really hard to appreciate with the terrible production because the drums just drown everything. James is singing really thrashy and fast and kind of a little bit sloppy in a way back to like the Kill 'Em All days, the Ride the Lightning on like really barbaric stuff like Creeping Death. And he's also utilizing a lot of his lower register vocals. Throughout this album, he's actually doing a lot of vocal diversity. And they go into this really cool pre-chorus riff that has like a really great thrashy groove to it. And the chorus is absolutely amazing. What always has made me love this song. The drumming is pretty crazy here. And James's vocals are amazing. I love the line "disconnect somehow." The way he sings that sounds really good. And then a lot of people complain that these songs are kind of long for no reason. But they kind of aren't at the same time. It actually is very, very, very similar to And Justice for All type of stuff because it's not like they're just repeating choruses and verses over and over like they did on Saint Anger. With this, they actually are long songs because they add all these really cool ideas in there. They have lengthy middle sections. It's like every song is trying to be like the frayed ends of Cyanide. There's some really great riffs in there, and there's actually a pretty damn good fast Kirk guitar solo. Overall, a great opening song, and it reminds me a little bit of Blackened. The end of the line, a song I've always loved. The intro is crazy and bombastic and goes right into like a really awesome thrashy groove. One of the best riffs off the album easily. And then the verse riff is just like super punchy. James's vocals here are really great as well in this verse. And the chorus is absolutely badass. And I absolutely love the like first part of the chorus. And there's a lot of cool instrumental stuff that goes on later in the song. There's a part that it slows down and it gets really melodic where James sings really great. And what's really weird is the guitar solo, but I believe comes before the whole melodic section. It just sounds like Kirk is masturbating his wah pedal. It's ridiculous. I love the lyric in the melodic part where he keeps saying the slave becomes the master. Broken Beat and Scarred is one of my less favorite songs on the album. I used to really like it because the riff, like the opening riff, is really badass, and the intro is like really cool, building up this like fierce atmosphere. It tries to give this like groovy "For Whom the Bell Tolls" kind of vibe, but the verse riff just kind of sounds weird. And what's always irritated me about the song is that James sounds great, he sounds fierce, and some of the lyrics are pretty good, and hell, even a lot of the riffs are good, especially the chorus. But goddamn, he keeps saying this one lyric over and over and over again. It just sounds stupid. He says, "What doesn't kill ya, make ya more strong." Now we have a very, very, very controversial and polarizing song called "The Day That Never Comes." And this one is controversial because it's kind of a one clone. I remember the first time I heard this, I didn't like it. I just thought it was cheesy, boring, like new Metallica balladry that I just didn't get or like. And in fact, it took me the longest time. Like I think last week I finally started to warm up to this song. I've always hated it. And all of a sudden I love it. I just can't explain it because a lot of Metallica purists fucking despise this song. And I think I realized that when I really kept listening to the song, I realized a lot of the vocal melodies, a lot of the guitar melodies, and a lot of the riffs and writing are actually pretty original. You know, a lot of people say it's a one clone, but I think it's similar to one in structure, not necessarily similar to it in riffs. Especially the chorus. The chorus is absolutely incredible, and I would say it's way better than the one chorus. And I actually really like the middle section. It's pretty different. There's this awesome part where it gets really slow in the middle section. It's really heavy, and James does some really good singing there. And then it starts picking up more and more. There's some really great riffs and transitions. This whole part is actually pretty progressive and has guitar solos and guitar melodies all over the place. Then we have my absolute favorite song on the album, All Nightmare Long. What's really funny is James Hetfield said that he predicted that this would be the filler song on the album because he said they just kind of pieced it together. He's like, it's sort of like throwbacky, but it's probably our least favorite. We think it's a filler. And it's pretty much since become the fan favorite on the fucking album. And the reason for that is that it has so many really great thrashy riffs that sound like they've never been done before, and it's very progressive, very much a And Justice for All type of song, but maybe even more technical. It starts with an incredible bass riff from Rob that builds this really dark atmosphere, and then right when you think it's about to go into like something slow, all of a sudden you hear this like muted riff that keeps getting really fast. The drums come in, the whole band comes in, they start thrashing over this riff, and then it just changes to another riff again, one that's amazing. It's like, yes, this keeps getting better and better and better, and the chorus is absolutely fan-fucking-tastic. One of the best Metallica choruses ever. The guitar riffs and melodies in there sound great. I especially love James' singing. Whenever I think of this song, I just think of two lines. We'll hunt you down without mercy, hunt you down all nightmare long. And of course the last part of the chorus, cause your luck runs out top. There's a lot of incredible guitar riffs and guitar solos towards the end of the song. It reminds me a lot of the Frayed Ends of Sanity, but overall it's a better song. It's incredibly written. Then we have Cyanide. This song actually took me a while to get into for some reason. I don't know what the fuck is up with me in this album. And it's actually kind of like the hit song on the album. The intro riff is just so weird. It shows off a lot of like wah pedal stuff, and that's kind of what used to scare me off in this song. It's just the intro sounds so weird. But when it gets into it, that awesome groove that they have is incredible. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Seek and Destroy. And that main riff is absolutely awesome. And James' singing along with it is actually really cool. He kind of has a little bit of that load sort of vocal, like stuff on Bleeding Me. And the chorus is like super quick and punchy. And the drumming in there is like super fierce and heavy. And this is one of the points in the album where the production sounds really bad, because during that chorus, it just sounds like a bunch of explosions. You can't hear anything. What I especially love is the middle part of the song, where they actually throw around a lot of good ideas, still remaining on the same rhythm, kind of like For Whom the Bell Tolls did. They have a great guitar solo, and then they return to the main riff, but they throw these like crazy guitar melodies in there. It sounds great. One of my absolute favorite songs on the whole album, and one that's a lot of people's least favorite song off the whole album. We have the Unforgiven 3. Why is it Unforgiven 3? Because it doesn't really tie in with the other two, except for the other two have to do with having people forgive them, society forgive them, and now this is like forgiving yourself or something like that. And this just seemed like a very, very bad idea to do that, especially when it has not really anything to do with it. It doesn't reprise anything from the other two. So it seemed like the title was very half-assed. However, the song was not. This is one of the best Metallica ballads ever. It's incredibly unique, and it doesn't rely too much on the heavy part. However, it's super creative. The build-up is absolutely amazing. The piano playing is really good. It builds up incredible atmosphere, and the orchestral work is amazing. Absolutely led by James, and it seems like this is almost a song written about himself or something like that, because the song just sounds like it means so much to him. The song is just so passionate, and his vocal performance, I want to say, is probably the absolute best James Hetfield vocal performance of all time. But the best part is when it gets really dark and melodic, and James keeps saying, forgive me not. The song keeps getting more and more like it's gonna explode into something, and then he says, why can't I forgive me? And he does this incredible scream that like fades out into the guitar solo. And it's one of Kirk's best guitar solos of all time. It's a little bit too long. It's almost 8 minutes, and there's not really like a long middle section. It's long because they have so much orchestration, and they kind of have lengthy verses and choruses. Then we have another really, really great song, the Judas Kiss. This song is like the epic type of song on the album. It has some really bizarre riffs that have never been heard before from Metallica. Intro riff is bombastic and weird, and instead of going to like something really ridiculously thrashy, it's actually at like a slow, epic pace. And the riff is just really weird, and especially the vocal melody that just kind of follows that riff. And then it goes into like a little quick build-up part where it's just sounding like, oh, what is this song going into? tedious bullshit. And then it goes into probably the best chorus off the whole album. And it has incredible riffs in there that Just some of the best Metallica riffs ever. And I love the line where he says, "Turn it into a fist, you can't resist the Judas Kiss." And I absolutely love the middle part because it's very progressive. There's so many changes. It's one of the most well-written middle sections. It builds up like the intro over again, and then instead of going into the main riff, when it's doing like the thudding drums, it goes into like a really, really spooky melodic ambient part where Kirk's doing some like really, really creepy wah guitar effect parts, and this is one of the points where the wah comes in handy because it sounds fucking evil right here. There's some great vocal parts, and then there's a lot of really great guitar solo trade-offs here actually. It's probably the most underrated song of the whole album. Then we have Suicide and Redemption, and this is another point where it shows a lot of them hearkening back to the good old days because it's an instrumental and it's long as absolute fuck. But the problem with the song is that they can't really get away with doing something like this nowadays. The riffs aren't nearly as good. It's just kind of weird, like early metal type of riffs. But there is a lot of like progression and change throughout the song, that's for sure. It's actually pretty like well written in a way where they keep changing it up, but the riffs just aren't that great. There's this one in there that's pretty decent. Then it goes into a middle section that's really melodic to try to sound like Orion. It's not that great. The guitar solo thing that James plays is just so predictable. I mean, it sounds cool and all. It sounds kind of throwbacky. It's just nothing that special. There's some cool riffs for like a little bit, but then it seems like instead of having a lengthy badass middle section, because the song is like 10 minutes, and then it just goes back into the entire motions of the first half of the song. It just feels like it's wasting a lot of time. Then we have My Apocalypse, a song that I used to hate for some reason. I don't know, I think it was the verse riff I used to hate because it just sounded like that really bad watery chuggy riff because the production sounds like ass. It starts out with a pretty thrashy riff. It gets right in your face right away, kind of like Dyer's Eve did. The main riff is pretty cool, but it just sounds weird. Like I said, with that production, the chug just doesn't sound as good. I actually really like James' singing on the verse. It sounds a lot like the good old days of like Kill 'Em All. And then you start to get into the middle section where it's awesome. They transition to this amazing riff that I believe Kirk wrote, and it sounds like some weird, almost Chuck Schuldiner death riff. And that riff leads into some really amazing, badass, catchy vocals from James that sound like the good old days once again. And they play some incredible guitar solos, and this stuff honestly sounded like it could have been one of the best songs off Master Puppets or something. And then it goes into my favorite part of the whole song right after the chorus, where it goes to this really incredible riff, one of my favorite riffs of the whole album. And I believe he says the lyric, "You know what makes me move forward? Dead man takes the steering wheel." Absolutely awesome way to end this great album. I only dislike one song, and I think it stands up with the masterpieces of the good old days.